I feel dapper. I feel good. Da 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 da. I knew I would. So good. So good. I got you. The bum bum. Ow! And we're here with Mathew Knowles Impact. Boy, you might have heard us. We're giving you some James Brown this morning. Everybody's in a good mood. I tell you, that's how I like to start out my day. So we have today my friend Stormy Simon, who is an e-commerce pioneer, corporate leader, cannabis activist. We'll talk more about that one. And the host of the podcast, Lunch with Stormy. Stormy spent 15 years of her career at the e-commerce retailer Overstock.com, beginning her tenure as a temp and eventually rising to president. Boy, went from a temp to president of a nearly $2 billion company in 2013. Stormy?
I'm so good. So good. I got you.
Uh-oh, Stormy's you're trying to get a damn record deal, Stormy.
I was practicing my voice before our interview in case you wanted to give a 50 plus something who can barely sing a chance at something.
Everywhere I go is somebody trying to get a record deal. So now Stormy is trying to get a record deal. I tell you. So let's just jump right in. I was looking at your bio, which is, boy, it's a lot of great stuff to talk about. But I always like to talk about how we grew up and how that impacted us. No pun intended. So tell us your story of growing up. I know it was a small town, if I'm not mistaken, Hammond, Indiana.
That's right. Those were the beginning years. I spent the first 5 years of my life there. And Hammond, Indiana is about 12 minutes or miles from Gary, Indiana. It's on the south end of Chicago. And we are a white family, but where I grew up, those first 5 years was across the street from the project. So we had a very cultured first 5 years of people, of different people.
Wait a minute. Stormy, you lived across the street from the projects.
Yeah.
Was this a predominantly Black project?
Yes. Yep.
And so I'm trying to visual, how many's in your family?
6 of us.
Oh.
4 kids. Yeah, 4 kids.
So I'm visualizing white family across the, as they say, street from the projects. So what did that look like? Were you the kid that was sneaking over there all the time?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we were. Me and my sister. My sister was 2 years older than me, and we had friends over there, and we were, we could always play together. There was this shared playground, and I don't know if it was shared, but it was on one of the properties, and we would all meet at the playground, and the rule was you can't go in the apartment building. My mom was like, we could play with anybody, but we couldn't go inside the building, and so that was exactly what we did. They had this elevator and we would go ride the elevator up and down. And when I think about that, we were like 3 and 5 years old. Anytime little kids are going into other buildings riding elevators, it's probably not a good idea.
But the most important thing in this that I hear at 3 and 5 years old, and you don't think about color, you don't think about racism at 3 years old. It's something that happens in our society, sometimes in our homes, that racism began. So my question to you, Stormy, did that happen for you? Did racism start in your home growing up?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say the varying levels of racism. So I would say that my mom especially was probably raised more racist. My dad went to high school in Chicago. I think he probably, I know he lived a more integrated life, but when I really noticed it, and what we really talked about was when we moved to Utah. And when we moved to Utah, it was all white people. And that's really where, the conversations with my mom, she would say, the world, the world is full of many colors, right? So she would say there's Black people and Mexican people in the world. She would talk about it. In other places, you would see more Black people or more Mexican people, and this is a very white community. So that kind of conversation absolutely happened, where that was the conversation. And that's what my parents noticed the most of when we got here, was there weren't people of color around. That.
How old were you when you moved to Utah? I'm just
5.
Oh, so okay, you're still a kid. You're still a kid. Mm-hmm. It's amazing again how as children we don't see colors. Something happens. Happens that it begins to instill this thing inside of us. And sometimes it's just looking out the window. Sometimes it's looking at TV or reading a magazine or hearing in the background in a home or a school these terrible words and terrible things being said about one another. I grew up in a small town like you, Stormy, in Gaston, Alabama, in the heart. In 1952, I was born. And I always tell the story that my mother, she was a strong Black woman that asked me to sacrifice as a kid. I didn't know any better, to integrate elementary, junior high, high school. So when I hear you as a kid, 3 and 5 years old, and playing with kids across the street from you that lived in the projects that were Black, and it didn't matter. But to someone in your family, I bet it did matter.
I would say that the one thing that was said, and my mom was raised in a different time, but it was like a Black neighborhood. They referred to a Black neighborhood, and growing up, they would say, oh, we lived next to the Black neighborhood. As I got older, I thought that was interesting that, I didn't, like you were saying, when you're a little kid, you're just like, hey, I'm hanging out, we're playing. I remember my friends from there. I remember. But then as you get older and your parents refer to something as a Black neighborhood, it's kind of like, oh gosh, I guess everybody there really was Black, is kind of how it came out of my head, I guess, but those kind of comments, yes.
You interviewed me twice, and some of the things we talked about, I want to talk about in more detail. I remember you telling me that your grandfather, I believe, was a member of the KKK?
That is my suspicion. And the suspicion comes from, we went to a family reunion I was 15 years old, so it's been a minute, but it was in Pulaski, Tennessee. And my mom's maiden name is Norwood. We're in Pulaski, Tennessee. It's a dry county up the street from the Jack Daniels distillery. Kind of odd, but super small town. I don't even know if it's a town. Our reunion was literally in the hills at a small cabin, like a shack. It was at 15. We had goat. They had served goat, and I want to say squirrel, but maybe that's just my brain filling in crazy memories. But anyway, we went up there, and this little town was, first of all, you're walking through it. It had a town square. Very Southern, and they would say, are you with the Norwood family? We'd go, yeah, we're with the Norwood family. And they would greet you and bring you in. What was interesting about this town is they had a plaque that was like, this is the original place of the KKK. And it was this barber shop, and they were put a plaque on the outside of the building, like they were proud of it. And then we had that conversation with my mom, because the barbershop guy said, are you guys with the family reunion? We say yes. He goes, come here, there's something I want to show you. Okay. So he's at the barbershop with the KKK plaque. We go in, and he starts talking to us about how they had these meetings here, opens a back door, says this was the room. I swear he said, goat sacrifices or something, but that it was this room. And then he pulls out this old KKK flag, and we have pictures of this. We have pictures of it. And so that's why I put it together, because I thought, even at 15 years old, I thought, why would someone randomly pick people up off the street and then proudly show this flag and talk about something that you wouldn't be proud of. And that's why I have the suspicion that that side of the family was definitely with the KKK.
And he probably was. And by the way, I've been to Pulaski, Tennessee, many times.
What'd you think?
Well, let me tell you a quick story. I like storytelling. I covered Tennessee for years when I sold diagnostic imaging. Mount Eagle. Have you ever heard of Mount Eagle?
I have not.
Well, Mount Eagle is up in the mountains where almost Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama kind of come together. So I remember making a call. I used to sell zero radiography for breast cancer detection. And it was on a Wednesday. And as I was walking out of the hospital, I got paged. And so it said, Mr. Knowles, come back to radiology. Went back, the radiologist says to me, Mr. Knowles, today is Wednesday. It's around noontime. Don't be alarmed, but you're going to see, dressed in their garb, the KKK. On Wednesdays at noon, they ask for donations. So, sir, I was so young. I'm talking 1980, 81. I'm in a brand new black XJ6 Jaguar. Now just see this picture. A black man driving down the road with the Klansmen on the side asking for donations in a brand new Jaguar. And so he told me, he says, don't stop, just keep going. I called everybody I could, and I said, if you don't hear from me in the next 15 minutes, I want you to call every police that you can think about calling.
Yes.
But even as a child, I've had my experiences with the KKK. It's a sad world that we still have organizations like that still exist in America. So I always like to kind of understand where you grew up and how you grew up, and because that defines who we are. So I want to get to you, a woman now. So Stormy, what really intrigues me about you, one is you're just a really good person.
Thank you.
Two, the fact that you and I can always talk about race and we can be honest about it. And I love hearing your perspective, and I give my perspective on it. And it doesn't have to always be the same. I had some guests on here that's going to surprise the hell out of you. Make sure you tune in, because there's going to be some people that I have that's going to have some really different perspectives on race. But let's jump on to growing up. I recall you didn't graduate from college, but you went to college for a brief period.
I did. I went to college for a brief period of time. So I became a mom at 17. Which is super young. Looking back, it's even younger than I thought it was. But I became a mom at 17, got married, got divorced by 21, and had my second son. So it was a busy few years. In between, when I had my second son, I really thought, I'm going to have to support these boys. I got to go get an education. And I did go to college for a little while. And what happened is on the summer break, it was the community college, not just the community college. It's a great place to go to school. But on summer break, I found a really good job. And once I got into like an office and I was experiencing this environment about the books I was reading about in school versus like living and applying real life, I didn't go back. And it was something I always regretted. But, when I think about it now, I still regret it. But when I think about it now, I just had such great business experiences that I never would have gotten in college. It's some pretty crucial years of history. So I never went back, but I scrapped it together to support those boys.
I'm asking these questions for a reason. I'm coming back to that. But I remember you saying, I listen. I'm teaching this class at Prairie View University right now. It's a sales class. And one of the important things that it keeps saying over and over is a great salesperson is a great listener. So I really listen when people are talking. And when we had our interviews, and you interviewed me rather before, you even talked about, and I believe it was during this period, Stormy, that you were on welfare.
Yes. Oh, yes. When I left my ex, I was on welfare. I had to use state assistance to make it by, and it was amazing. I was given food stamps, an allowance, and I was on subsidized rent. So I was completely, you call it self-sufficient, but it was with state funds. But I'm grateful for that. I'm so grateful. And when I started working, they provided daycare. So the kids were taken care of. But yeah, I utilized welfare more than one occasion. Absolutely. Thank goodness it was there. You know, this was in 1990, 91-ish, right around there. And it was before a welfare reform. So it was a very different program than it is today, I'm sure. But for me, you know, if I hadn't had that resource, I just wouldn't have been able to make it. And I was super embarrassed about it, to think about having to go on welfare, you know, and it had such a bad rap. And my parents said, you should do this with your head held high. We've spent our whole life putting money into this system that helps people just like you right now. So you shouldn't feel like it's definitely not a handout. It's something we've, you know, put away for. You give your money to the government and they help take care of you. So that was their take on it. And they, you know, were just very proud. They would say, I'm not embarrassed. We're not embarrassed.
Well, that's interesting, their take when society, because when we think of welfare in America, you know, the messaging of it is it's mainly Black and brown people. We forget the population of America and that there's far more when we look at the number that fall into poverty in America. There's way more white people that fall under the poverty rate than there are Black and brown people. But when we think of welfare, the messaging is that these people, they don't deserve it. We're giving something to them. Yet your parents gave a different perspective that, in fact, you earned and deserved welfare. That was something you earned and deserved. I just find that just really so interesting, the perspective on that.
Yeah, you know, it is now that you mention it, it really is interesting that they thought of it that way. But their take was, you know, they've paid their taxes and they paid in the system. And my dad, I don't know if we ever talked about this, but my dad, you know, would say, if we take care of everybody, then everybody's taken care of, you know, so it's like his idea was you just take care of everybody. Like everyone should take care of each other and then it's taken care of. We shouldn't be judging about how much one person needs versus another person at a certain time in their life. So they felt like they had paid into the system, and they said, you know, you're going to pay in the system too. You'll pay this back just by simply living your life and paying your taxes. They did mention, you know, one of the things they said was, this is a crutch. It's not a forever thing. You know, this is a crutch. It's your stepping stone to get to your next thing. You don't get comfy. And it would have been easy to get comfy, actually. But they were really adamant that I go to school, that I go get a job, that I utilize the daycare services.
And then that takes us to overstock.com. How did you get there? Tell us that journey. I think the listeners would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I had a bunch of random jobs. Like I did a morning show on the radio. I was an event planner. I did all these random jobs. And then in 2001, actually, the story is really interesting. I had moved back from Vegas. September 11th happened. I had moved out there for a startup. Vegas shut down. It was so sad. And so I just want to be back home with my family. You know, America had been attacked. I'm questioning everything I should be doing with my life. And I want to give more versus just, you know, take these jobs. Months before that, I had called online. There was this site that did psychics. You could call and talk to a psychic. And so I did it. And this person had said to me, you need to go to a temp agency and you're going to find a job in computers and you're going to work with someone who's going to be like your best friend. Well, at the time it seemed absolutely crazy. Fast forward 6 months, I'm back in Utah. A friend of mine goes, oh my gosh, my girlfriend's just started a temp agency. Go in there. Because my idea was I'm going to wait through the holidays. This was in October. I'm going to get through the holidays and go back to school. So I go to this temp agency, just like the psychic said. They begged me to go into this job, overstock.com. They're like, we just landed this big account. I go in, get the job. I was hired as a temp. This is in December 2001. And, met the CEO and founder and became really great friends. And we were a dynamic team in building this company. And then over the course, starting as a temp, and we can go through, the next 12 years, but then becoming president, a member of the board 10 years in. I was CMO in 2007, senior VP of customer service in 2005, I think. But my career and my path there was just crazy. Of success, just some really good wins and the timing of it all. But it really, the psychic said to go in and do it.
You got to be shitting me, Stormy.
I am not shitting you.
You listened to a psychic? That's how you became the president of Overstock.com, because you listened to a psychic. Is that what you're telling me?
Here's the thing. I didn't listen to the psychic. I wound up going into that temp agency without even thinking about the psychic. Like, it wasn't even, I had just moved back and I had enough money for 3 months, and I was living with my mom, and I thought, for 3 months, I'm just going to stay home all winter. I've never done this. And about 2 weeks in, I was like, I can't sit here. I have to get a job. So my friends had people starting the temp agency. That just all synchronistically happened. I wasn't even thinking about the psychic when I went in there. I went in and said, I hope you have the Nordstrom account, because all I want to do is wrap presents.
Wow.
That was what I said to them. Is I just want to go wrap presents, not get too deep into anything right now. I really want to figure myself out, was my idea.
High expectations. So how did you move up? I just want to know, you moved up the ranks. What would be that thing that you would say that was the reason why you moved so fast and upward mobility?
I raised my hand, and I use that a lot. I always say, raise your hand, because raising your hand, we think of little kids who want a time to speak, or we think of, I don't know the answer and I don't want everyone in the room to know that I don't know the answer. Well, those might be the moments that you just might stand out. And I rose my hand for many things. One time in particular, I was on the group. It was very early. It was called the Business to Business team. And before, it was so early in the internet, we had a separate website and team to sell bulk items. And I was on this team. We were newly formed. We were trying to put it together. We needed, we were hitting goals. I'm sitting in a room with 3 people who had been managers of this team. I was fairly new. The CEO says, whose head can I put on the chopping block to get this done? We pause for a second. I look at the other people, because I'm thinking, well, obviously it's them. They would put their head on the chopping block to get it done. And they didn't raise their hand. And I just raised my hand. And after that, I think 2 things happened. One, I did hit the goals and I was able to prove myself. But second, he knew I would put my head on the chopping block, that I would take accountability and responsibility for whatever it was. I was the newbie in the room, and I was handed that department, and I grew it to $20 million in about, less than 24 months.
And now it's a $2 billion company, right?
Now the company's $2 billion. Yeah, I eventually closed it. Yeah.
$2 billion. I want everyone to hear that. Raise your hand. Gosh, that seems so simple to do, but so hard for many people to raise their hand. And there's many, many reasons today to raise your hand.
My family, we didn't talk about going to college. It wasn't a thing. Our parents weren't like, you're going to go to college and you're going to do this. It was, you were just going to get by, and you were going to work hard, and you had to work hard, and you had to show up every day and do your work. And, the other thing I say a lot is, don't be the slowest gazelle. Like, if you can't outrun somebody, get in a different game. But, you had to show up, work hard, and prove yourself through that.
That moves me to my next question, but more after a word from our sponsor. So what do you think this country is going?
I think that there's something really beautiful about anything that erupts because you get to start over. There's a big boom and we listen and we hear and we get to start rebuilding and start over. And I can't help, despite everything that's happened in our country and the divides and the fights and whatever, the differences of opinion, this eruption has started. And I mean, with across the board, with women, with race, with equality, with acceptance, with transgenders, with all of us, learning how to live together. And I'm hopeful that the country starts teaching tolerance. I find it amazing now that Trump is out of office. Like, there's this calm. I just kind of got the chills. But it's like, I feel more peaceful. I feel like there's this pressure lifted off. And it's interesting. I think we all just learned how much power one man in our country can have. I think that's something we all need to think about. Trump showed us that is a very powerful position. We've never had a president leverage the position to show us how, big he could be. So now we know we got to get good people in there.
Stormy, a lot of things happen. And on my show, I keep it real. 4 years ago, a lot of people didn't show up to vote. And I'm going to hold people accountable and remind them that we didn't show up 4 years ago. And had we did, we would not be in this position we are today. I always tell my girls when they were growing up, if I say I'm going out of town, don't use my car, they get in the car and have an accident and a drunk man hit them because he ran the light. Don't call me saying, Daddy, a drunk man ran the light and hit the car. Well, I told you not to use the car. And if 4 years ago we had done what we should have done, we wouldn't be in this situation. So we have to hold ourselves accountable and let that be a memory and a message that we never do it again. Because if we don't bring it up and remind folks, then it can happen again. And something else you said, change. Change is supposed to be uncomfortable. That's why I love talking to you, Stormy. From the first time we talked, we're supposed to make people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Mathew Knowles Impact, I want people to be angry as hell sometimes when they get off of here. Because that's how we change. We don't change agreeing. We change by listening and hearing other perspectives. And we change by internally admitting, first of all, we need to change. And when we see the number of people who voted for Trump, clearly tells us in America that change needs to happen. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think everybody learned the lesson, right? I think now more than ever, because everybody go, oh, I don't vote. My vote doesn't matter. Well, now we know votes matter. It is the only way our voices might get through the system. But I do agree, folks, these past 4 years, it was, whether someone agrees with his policies or not, it was disruptive. He's a disruptive man. He thrives on disruption. He thrives on, combativeness and being right and all those things that we can't have. It creates a divide in our country. We need to focus on learning and expanding. We don't, just because you disagree, you don't have to change your mind. You just expand your tolerance and your understanding and learning and loving, and then go back in your bubble. We don't have to go make the world think like us. Everybody doesn't have to think alike. That's what makes it so beautiful. But having I think it was a powerful lesson for all of us these past 4 years about that vote.
Well, you're right. Again, the 4 years ago that we had the opportunity for change, we didn't do it. But let me tell you, I'm reading that the rest of the world is looking at America and with their head down and just pure dismay that this is America. We have lost a lot of our around the world. That thing, we call it We've lost a lot of that. And this really boils down to me. I just want to cut to the chase. White Privileged men, your day is slowly coming to an end. And that's what this really is about. This is about privileged white men fighting tooth and nail, fighting to keep. When the Declaration of Independence said, they wrote it years ago, that all men were created equal.
Except for
Black,
me and you,
brown, Asian, Muslims, LGBTQ.
Women weren't on there at all.
Women. But how is it even to interface with a privileged white man? Tell me that.
I think what's interesting is they don't know. Like, it's so structurally integrated that they can't see it. And I don't think that all of them see themselves as privileged. I think they see it as having earned. But, I look at my sons. My sons are 30 and 34, which is weird to say. But I look at my sons and they're so loving and accepting. And, my son's first girlfriend, he was in kindergarten, but his first little girlfriend was Black. But here's the story. So he comes home from school one day. He's like, I have a crush on this girl. And I said, oh, you do? What color is her hair? And he goes, black. And I said, what color is her eyes? He goes, black. And I said, that's great. I can't wait to meet her. And when I met her, she was a little Black girl. And we never talked about skin color. We never did. We just never did.
You didn't have to talk about it. You soft skin color. I hear people give me that all the time. Oh, Matthew, I don't really see skin color. Bullshit. We all see skin color.
Well, not at 5 years old. It wasn't like when he described her to me, he said her skin was a different color. He didn't say it, and I never said it back. We never talked about it.
But you saw skin color.
Well, yeah. Well, there was one little Black girl. I was grateful there was a Black child in his class.
But you said, quote, we didn't see skin color. And I said bullshit because you saw skin color.
Well, I mean, you see color. When you see anything, you see color. But, I don't know that acknowledging someone's skin color is a bad thing. I mean, of course, it was a little Black girl and he's a little white boy, but it doesn't have to mean anything.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you, Stormy. See, I agree with you so much. But large population, many white people would say just the opposite. I don't see skin color. I see everybody. One of my best friends are Black. All of those words that are stupid, man. Like, if you're a white person today, please don't say that around a Black person. We're going to look at you like you're crazy. We're going to say, what? But, that's being said because people don't want to come real. We're culturally different.
Yes.
Most whites don't know the story, the journey that we had coming from Africa, and that 2.5 year journey in that boat, and not being able to communicate because we were tribal. Stormy, most people don't want to admit that we're culturally different. And that's where we have to come together and educate. I want to talk about some things that you are doing right now, this moment. And I want to tell you again how proud I am. And I say that in sincerity, to see you go from a temp mother and become go from temp to become president of a major company, $2 billion company. That's not easy. And I say that in sincerity. But I also do say that it would be difficult for a Black woman to do that.
It was difficult for me. The hurdles I had to take, the punches you have to take as a woman in business, especially in the early days, for me, I'm
going to tell you what my wife tells me sometimes. Stormy, damn it ain't always about you.
My story was
it ain't always about you. We're talking about other people. But look, we're having fun. This is great. But tell me about cannabis. I subscribe because I'm a cancer survivor. And when I sometimes have pain, and I have another medical issue, it really helps. What's odd is I live in California 49% of the time, in Texas 51% of the time, and then I got to do a complete head shift when I come to Texas.
I bet.
But I go to Canada and I can just pick up the phone and it's delivered. I just think that's nuts. But tell me what you're doing in the cannabis space.
Well, I jumped into cannabis after Overstock. Part of that was the rebel in me and the issues that were happening with the legalization of cannabis. Black and brown communities, we still have people in prison. Every time I spoke anywhere, a Black woman would come and tell me her story about her family and how this plant has negatively impacted it. And it was actually used as a weapon against these communities at a time. And that's a great, big, long story, but people should go read about it. It is in the history. It's horrible. And that was part of my interest in jumping into the industry, was like this legalization was happening, but our history is so tangled. And yet people are pushing it forward as a medicine and as a civil right. So I jumped in, had some great experiences there, worked in a grow, worked in a dispensary in Denver, worked on some blockchain banking solutions because the banks don't want their money either. And was CEO of High Times for a bit. And then right now I'm working with a group called Mission Green, it's founded by Weldon Angelos, who was imprisoned, the federal prison for a nonviolent cannabis crime, and served 13 years of a 55-year sentence.
Tell us more, because there's so many.
Well, Weldon was just pardoned by Trump. He pardoned Weldon, which was an amazing thing. And what the work of Mission Green is, of which I'm executive director, is to free nonviolent cannabis prisoners from all prisons, but federal prisons to start, until we put ourselves out of business and there's no more prisoners to free.
As soon as you said that name, who freed him, the first thing that came to my mind is, how much did he have to pay?
Well, he got freed it was kind of an Obama-Trump thing. They both worked on it. It was under the Compassionate Act. And so it was right during the turnover of Obama and Trump. He was freed in 2016, I believe, maybe 17. And then he was just pardoned.
Oh, so you're talking way long ago. I get it. So tell us more about, you're on the board of Mission Green, and you're right, there's so many minorities that's in prison for these small offenses, where, again, you look at, if it's crack, it's one type of fine and one type of sentence. If it's cocaine, it's another, which is typically lesser, typically white. It's just amazing. Every aspect of our society shows racism and differences that are given to our people. It's just amazing to me how that works. You're doing some other good things. You did a upcoming road trip. Or did you do it? Did you do your road trip?
It's coming. So Lunch with Stormy, the podcast that I have, when I ran for office, so I ran for Democratic office here in the red state of Utah this past election. I didn't win, but it's a very red state. And it really opened my eyes to America, the zip codes. I had this awakening for myself of not only how great our country could be with all this divisiveness, like what we can do if we work together, and how many people out there probably are, wishing they could work together or know each other or just have an understanding. But I was inspired to do Liberty Lunch, and I did a series of interviews with people within politics, on the outskirts of politics, or someone who has run and lost or whatever it was, but it was really quite interesting. And then now I want to do, Lunch Across America, a road trip where we go into these little towns, and I want to come visit you, and I'll sit outside in social distance. I'll be good. We can even do it in the yard. I'm going to get a motorhome and I'm going to drive it. I love road trips. I love America. And there's so much of our history, and while some of it is ugly, it's still ours. And we should still embrace it, because the only way to allow to move on is to say it happened, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, let's talk about it. And we're all here, and we're all Americans. We're all committed to living on this land together and making it work. And if we can't make it work through our leaders, we can make it work together. And so just the idea of introducing people across all 50 states, that are doing small things with butterfly effects that make it better for everybody. And, the idea of focusing in your zip code, this is for everybody. If you want to make a change in your backyard. You don't have to do international, Instagrammable change. You can do the smallest thing in your community, like feed a family. And no one needs to know, but I promise you, that the butterfly effect of that very small gesture will create a better thing, and it'll just be passed on. So, the idea that all these small changes are happening, America is great again. We are great. And let's start exposing our good stories. You don't have to be a superstar to be a superstar.
Well, I like the fact, just another example of raising your hand, that will stick with me. We have many opportunities to raise our hand. And that's just another one. But I want to ask, a couple of last closing questions here. And one on the coronavirus, your thoughts, how we've got ourselves in this mess. Every time we're almost about to get out of it, there's another event that happens. And then we're about to get out of it. And then there's another event that happens. And then we come up with vaccines. And then there's another event that happens. And then it's getting a little better. And then there's another event that happens. And I'm not going to wear my mask because you're a Democrat. And I'm not going to wear my mask because I'm white. Do you think America knows that we are just going in a cycle up and down like a roller coaster? And it only takes a month. A month, if we all just wore a mask, this would be over. Am I missing something?
No, I think when you said that the whole world is looking at us like tisk tisk, this is part of it. This is not a political issue. It's a pandemic. We have histories of pandemics. It's nobody's fault. We're not being punished. It is what it's a virus. It's science. And it drives me nuts when people start on these weird paths of, it's a Republican or Democrat thing. It's just a virus. That's what it is. And we're just humans. So, everybody's got to get off the rose-colored glasses like never in America. No, it got us too. In Utah, we kind of did a mandate for masks. We were at about I think we were 2,000 cases a day. We're at 500 now. And it was that simple. Just the governor saying, I prefer everybody wear a mask. We probably should. Drop substantially. It's that simple. I have not contracted the virus. I do live a subdued life. However, I do go to the store. I do, I have to go function. I had to go buy clothes the other day. I wear a mask. I have my hand sanitizer. It's an adjustment of behavior, and I'm hyper vigilant of it. But it's not, I don't walk around going, I'm so inconvenienced. I can't believe I have to wear this mask. It's a mask. In fact, I'm sitting here thinking, geez, anywhere I go, I might wear a mask forever. Why not? I don't care.
I'm guilty. I found myself guilty, and I'll say that I was wrong. 3 or 4 years ago, I fly a lot, as you know, and I would see my fellow Asian Americans, and I would say, why the hell they have a mask on? I was wrong. I was wrong.
Turns out they have PTSD from their viruses.
They were ahead of us, and they knew what they were doing. And you're right, but I'm here to say that if we don't get this together, what people are not realizing, these numbers could quickly double, triple, and in moments, we could be talking about 1 million people die in a matter of weeks. So this, I don't think everybody's understanding it. But last question, I've enjoyed this. January 6th.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on January 6th?
January 6th was surreal. That was just bizarre to watch the Capitol be stormed that way. I think it was something that our lawmakers, the Hill and everybody, there's something in it that was a lesson. I think it was the tip of the iceberg, in the sense of everybody just kind of goes, okay, both sides said, I think that's enough. Like, it's enough. When you've got people storming the Capitol like that and they think the president told them to do it, you better those are not lawmakers. Those aren't leaders. They didn't fight back enough. Those Republican people, representatives that allowed Trump or backed Trump in certain aspects versus run our country for us. Not for you, not for your career, not because you don't want Trump to send you a bad tweet, but for us and the right thing to do. And I'm hoping that January 6th maybe made everybody feel a little bit accountable as to some of the measures that you might have to take before we ever get to the point that Americans have to charge their own capital. It's embarrassing. And how about them taking selfies of themselves and posting it on social media? Like, what world do you live in that they didn't think they were going to get in trouble? They actually felt that this was the way of our land. It's disturbing. It's disturbing to think we've gotten people to that point. I'm so grateful to the media for erasing Trump. They erased him. I do disagree. I feel like he should have Twitter if he wants, but I think that's everybody should. But like CNN and everybody following him and his opinion and his craziness, I think that was it for him. I think that's how he exited on that note. And it was about time everybody got to see that note.
And we're going to exit on that note as well. I want to just thank you, Stormy.
Oh, thank you.
Stormy Simon, my friend. She's a white girl, though.
That's right, but I love you. This white girl loves you.
I just think it's so cool when we can just talk about it.
I do too. I love it so much.
And not feel all tight and tense, and we can't say, that we're different or we think different. So I really thank you for this interview.
I appreciate everything about you. I'm coming to see you when this whole thing's over.
Road trip.
Yeah, road trip to your house. I can't wait.
Road trip. Hey, guys, this is Mathew Knowles. After the break, we will be back with your calls.
Hello, Dr. Knowles. How are you?
I'm good today, Kimberly. Thank you for calling in to Mathew Knowles Impact. So I want to ask you first, what's your background?
My background, I am in project management. I am currently a quality assurance leader for a major financial institution.
And how many years have you been doing your path in corporate America?
I would say about 20 years.
Did you go to college?
Yes, I did.
Were you ever on welfare?
Yes.
Thank you for your honesty. Did you view it the same way that Stormy did? Parents said she earned and deserved the opportunity to have welfare?
No. I was actually embarrassed.
But you heard a white woman said she, with attitude in her voice, I earned and deserved it. And you, 20 plus years in corporate America, you're not the president of a $2 billion company. Do you think that would have ever happened to you? That same scenario we just heard as a Black woman, would that have happened?
Well, first of all, it's hard to even make it that far just being an educated Black woman. And I am a minority within the company because I am 9 times out of 10, the only African American in the room. And I just think that, I have to work extra hard to prove myself that I'm even worthy to sit at the table.
And that was the point of this interview today with Stormy. And I'm not taking anything away from Stormy because she works hard. She's a bright young woman. But what I do want to say, that I don't believe, just like you, Kimberly, that a Black woman could have walked in those shoes in corporate America and would be in 15 years the president of a $2 billion-dollar company. And here you are, you worked your butt off for 20 plus years, have a degree, proven yourself. You know, we live in a different world, and that's what I wanted this interview to bring out today, is the two worlds that we live in, and especially that world of privilege. And thank you for calling Mathew Knowles Impact.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Mathew Knowles Impact is all about building bridges and tearing down walls. So thank you for being a part of this mission. You can learn more about me, how to book me to speak at your next event, by going to mathewknowles.com. Then getting simpler than that. And you can follow me on social media by going to @Mr. Mathew Knowles. Let's stay connected. Mathew Knowles Impact is a production of iHeartRadio and Music World Entertainment Corporation, produced by Tamika Campbell, produced and edited by Marcy DePina and Ramsey Yunt. Our executive producer is Tyler Klain, and of course myself. I'd like to thank my team at Music World Entertainment, Lynn Almanza and Ashton Shields. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. I'm out.